Just when you think you've heard it all in this story, which has been plenty, Michael Francis, the father of Mica, just laid out a bombshell accusation on the Awake podcast. So welcome to the point. Let's get to it.
Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use.
Now, before I play this video, let's lay out some context here, because this isn't the first time we've heard allegations like this against John Paul. And make no mistake about it, this is a huge accusation from Michael Francis, the father of Mica Miller. And if you prefer an open conversation, hit that like button and leave a comment down below. Because this allegation is either so absurd it's ridiculous, or it's so out there and no one would believe it to begin with. Which would essentially give John Paul Miller free reign to do stuff like this and never get caught. Now listen to this clip and you tell me what you think down in the comments below.
Well, she said, Dad, he had me in the car. We would be driving after dinner and he would just say, hey, let's go get a prostitute. Just like nonchalant, no big deal.
You like say that to her? Like, yeah, did you want her involved in a threesome?
He wanted some kind of a threesome?
Absolutely. He would get someone in the car and, okay, let me back this up too, because this is an important thing to say. John Paul uses things and, of course, twists the narrative. He used her remarks to say she was crazy because she made a comment saying, if I'm pregnant at this time, it could be a black baby. And he said, that's just so dumb. That doesn't make any sense at all. She's crazy. Well, he had sex in front of her with a black guy because she didn't want to have anything to do with it. And then he emitted in their area and such, and for his pleasure. And because Mica didn't want to participate at that point, she was just shocked. And so she was just thinking there's, that could be possible. That's why she said that. Not because she was crazy, because he submitted her to that. He demanded it of her. And that there was multiple occasions of this happening.
So those statements are out there, but the question is it believable? In terms of this being nonsense, let's get all this out of the way right now. My initial thoughts were, well, if she was brainwashed, even if she was brainwashed, she would know that what's going on right there in that particular situation is highly illegal. And he made the statement that John Paul and Mica, when doing something like this, would shop local, so to speak. And if he's shopping local, would that not increase the chances that he would get caught? Maybe somebody he solicited recognized who he was. Maybe they took out their camera. It is a lot of risk when you're doing something like this and you're a public figure, especially when you're shopping in your own backyard and your face is highly recognizable. So for a public figure to do something like this in his own backyard is absolutely beyond risky, right? Now, according to Mica's father, this was something they did frequently. But make no mistake about it, and it is well documented, the Francis family and the Millers didn't exactly see eye to eye. And there is a lot of incentive for that family to push out sort of half-truths, especially considering they got a court hearing coming up. But can we say this is 100% false? Well, in my own opinion, this is where you get into a lot of gray area. Now, of course, the narrative from the Miller side of the family is that Mica suffered and dealt with several issues. And those issues, according to the family, and we've seen some of the videos, have been well documented. But does that mean everything she says in her journals or everything she has told her family is 100% false? Well, let's keep in mind that some of the accusations levied against John Paul by Mica have actually turned out to a degree to be true. She had made the statement to her family that John Paul had posted pictures of her online, and that turned out to be true. She had made the statement to the police and her family that her tires had been punctured several times, and at the dealership they found what punctured her tires. And she had also told her family that John Paul had been tracking her or stalking her, something to that effect, and a mechanic finds a tracker on her vehicle when he's working on her car. And in terms of this narrative that she was absolutely losing it, the family has said that before she met John Paul, she had no issues whatsoever. And these issues didn't arise until John Paul and her started getting in a relationship. But we can't forget those court records. We can't forget the court records by John Paul's ex-wife, where she levied accusations very similar to what you just heard. And according to news stories, when that situation came out, members of the church approached John Paul and said, hey, you need to get treatment for your night worker addiction, which he apparently turned down, which cost him his congregation several years ago. But here we are now on social media with very similar accusations. Now, if that family can provide some type of proof or text message chain showing that what they're alleging is actually factual, then would it not be 100% game over for John Paul? Because make no mistake about it, what they're alleging is 100% illegal in South Carolina. And we know that John Paul's attorney posted that message that nobody should defame his client, that all these accusations and online rumors are 100% false. And if people knowingly spread false information with the intent of hurting John Paul, and saying things to be factual that are not factual, then they will be met with some type of legal action. And I'm wondering at this point, has the Francis family received one of those letters? Because they are driving a lot of this narrative floating around on social media. Now, Nancy Grace had said something to the effect that she has received a letter from John Paul's attorney, but don't quote me on that, but I haven't heard anything about the Francis family receiving a similar letter. But wasn't that interview next level? And the big question is, if stuff like this was going on, how on earth is John Paul not in jail? Unless none of these accusations are true and this is all just coming from a grieving family. Ultimately, time will tell. Let me know where you fall down in the comments below. Y'all be safe now.